I was not, and I want to assure the board, saying that we're not going to implement the board decision on that. We just, I just said, you know, we're talking to them. We're talking.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. I heard this quote.
Right.
All of us have.
It's just.
By the way, speaking of the Wagner Ranch corridor, I just really want to compliment you. I went to the Wagner Ranch practice for night and walked through that work. It's fabulous, and that you got it in so quickly.
Thank you very much. I won't tell you how much we went through to make that happen. But it was a lot.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was very nice. I saw it too at practice, whatever.
We have very happy kindergarten teachers.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the director of facilities?
I just want to say thank you for this report. It's very clear and easy to read, and I really appreciate all the information that comes into that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me grab some public comment on this facilities item. Maya McBride. And thank you for your patience, Maya, and all people who are going to speak.
I spoke earlier about the process and the lack of communication with the Delray fence, and I'm going to go through now the safety issues that I see with the Delray fence. Again, my name is Maya McBride, and I live in the Delray neighborhood. My two older children attended Delray, and now I have a third grader at Delray. I've been a Delray parent since 2004. When I first encountered the new Delray perimeter fence being built this past July, I was really upset by its prison-like appearance and the fact that both Delray parents and the neighborhood were not included in the process or informed about the fence. While focusing on the lack of process involved, I realized how truly unsafe this new perimeter fence is. And I'm just going to take you quickly through some of the FBI active shooter data that I found on incidents between 2000 and 2013. Incidents unfold quickly. They often happen before law enforcement arrives, and over 24% of these shootings occur in an educational environment. Therefore, the FBI recommends that efforts be centered around active shooter incident training that follows the run, hide, or fight methodology. That's for institutions like educational institutions or offices. That being said, for many years, the creek, with its low 3-foot fence, was an escape route for emergency planning and training purposes for teachers. To my knowledge, teachers were trained to either perform a lockdown or run an escape to the creek with their class. For those teachers who have classrooms on the creek side of Delray, escaping to the creek was an optimal choice. Most of the gates on the perimeter fence are currently padlocked closed. There are only 2 push-bar quick-release type gates, one at the front of the school and one at the back of the school. If there's an internal threat inside the school and children do not have the option of being in a lockdown, children and teachers cannot get out along the long 6-foot perimeter fence. They will be trapped. I have specific questions that I would like to direct to the board. And this is what I want to say, is I would like to know when and how often OUSD will train teachers in active shooter incident training at Delray and other OUSD schools. What is Delray's safety plan with the new fence? If OUSD does not have a safety plan to keep my child safe, now that you have this new fence at $150,000, then you need to provide an escape route for children and teachers, or you need to remove this fence if you don't have a safety plan. And at first I thought removing the fence was an extremist view, but you know what, from our survey that we did of 196 people throughout the neighborhood, 45% of the people in the survey said remove the fence. It's unnecessary. So I'm one of 3 parents responsible for putting out that survey. I've sent it all to you on a PDF and a file in email. I've crunched some of the numbers, and you're welcome to look at the survey and interpret the data on your own. But I think this new fence, while costly, is ineffective and it's now unsafe. And I want to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen McPhee.
I hope I'm not echoing something that's already been said, but nonetheless wanted to put my 2 cents forward. First, my name is Eileen Peak. I have, as you saw recently leave, a 3rd grade son at Del Rey and a girl who's in 7th grade at OIS, who obviously went to Del Rey before that. I'd first like to thank you all for your service. I know it takes up a lot of your time, and I really do respect that. I volunteered for a lot of different things at schools and elsewhere in the past, and I know it can be a very thankless task. So thank you. But I'd like to remind the community that 2 years ago, the school board created a facilities task force, and its charter was to gather community input regarding the expenditure of the Pine Grove funds, prioritize district needs, and make recommendations to the school board. At the May 12th, 2014 school meeting, the facilities task force submitted its findings and recommendations. They found, quote, security perimeter fencing and gates are not a priority based on stakeholder input. The task force recommended, quote, transparency to the public in terms of how the funds are spent. So let's fast forward a few months to the fall of 2014, when 3 of you, Ms. Butler, Brown, and Connie, is that right? We're running for school board. There was also a 4th candidate in the mix. There were many in the Orinda community who had concerns about a lack of transparency. There were issues at Wagner Ranch with the principal and discipline. There were frustrations. I had these about the way that math was being, the Common Core math was being implemented at OIS, and there were other issues, I'm sure, as well. When you came to the school site at Del Rey, I was there. I asked questions about that. I also read each of your statements that you put, or the, what do you call it, the statements to the press in the Lombard Weekly, the Orinda News, and to a person you all said that you wanted to make sure there was transparency, that you took input from stakeholders. Ms. Brown made this a very central platform of her campaign, and I believe you did as well, Ms. Butler, a couple of years back. So, in the process, though, this summer, we found ourselves at Del Rey finding a fence being built. That very quickly, unanimously, without seeking any community input, you turned our school into something, as Maya said, looks like a prison. Those are my kids' first words when they saw it. You know, I think that the 6-foot fence, the locked gates will do absolutely nothing to deter or even delay in a meaningful way a determined attacker. And I just don't think it's doing anything for safety, and you've spent, let's say, $150,000 of very precious funds on a project that just really does nothing. So I'm very concerned that you did this, you took this action. I do hope that you'll consider taking it down, at the very least, the locked gates, but I think Maya's points about the 6-foot fence are well taken. I know my sons can scale it, but I don't know if a lot of other kids can, and you know, is that really something we want to have to be thinking about? So, thank you.
Thank you. Marta Wallace?
I spoke to them regarding the temperature issue. I think everybody knows I'm too hot. And the kids are too hot, and I'm concerned about them. And I would request that you make it a priority, an agenda item, to address this and get in compliance with the budget.
Okay. This is back to the board for, this is a discussion item only. Is there anything else on the board on this?
Yeah, I just want to say, since we had 2 people talk about the fence and we were handed this paper with the results of 196 responses, I totally hear you about transparency. I am concerned myself. I know I voted for this, we all did, but I'm concerned that we can't continue this type of thing. We have to communicate better. So in terms of moving ahead in future projects, I just want to emphasize, I think we need to notify neighbors. I don't know if, I think we have a new facilities director, maybe he's planning to already do that, but when we have facilities projects, I just want to state that I agree that if it's going to be seen or a big change to immediate neighbors and parents at the school, we need to make sure we're communicating.
I think solar will be our opportunity.
Yeah, good. So, and also, I also want to say, she brought up issues of, you know, what if there's a shooter? I know that in the past, there was a police, some effort to get information from the police department in Orinda in order to address safety issues. So I don't know if maybe Joe wants to, at some point, consider, you know, those kind of things. That's sort of like a future agenda item, but school safety in terms of not only the fence but other schools. I'm not really informed myself, and I would like to understand better. Have we covered everything we need to cover as far as that goes?
Carol?
Thank you. I want to thank you, Eileen, for your comments, and I did make transparency a central part of my platform. And one of the things I most appreciate about this fence survey is the suggestions about how to communicate. Email parents and neighbors. I think the neighbors are equally important. We can't just rely on the email mechanisms from the principals to the students' parents. Neighbors are very, very important to communicate with. Having a designated time frame for feedbacks and comments, site plans being publicly posted, and I agree, we really need to amp up the communication, and we are going to be installing solar soon, and this will be a really good opportunity for testing how we can expand our communication.
Mr. Warren, can I
Please.
from a comment perspective, so you guys do have a lot to do, and I've sort of watched the process. It's very arduous, obviously, and you don't even have that big of a committee. So I would encourage the board, facilities matters or otherwise, curriculum, which is one of my subject matter, is really to look at best practices and not reinvent the wheel yourselves. So there are very easily seen some of the practices that work out there. So from a facilities perspective, for example, I wanted to put windows in the back of my house, and I had to go through, you know, some very clearly laid out steps to do that. Notifying neighbors, getting their approval, going to the planning commission, submitting paperwork. So, you know, please don't try to reinvent wheels, and I think you'll get it done really quickly and still serve the purposes you need.
Anything else from the board on this item?
Well, I wanted to agree with the people in the audience who have requested that we agendize air conditioning in the future. I think we do need to address that, and so just wanted to state that. Thank you.
And obviously, Sarah, we're gonna get to future agenda items.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, that item's for information only. Excuse me, for discussion only. Next, we're gonna do the 2013-2014 parcel tax independent citizens oversight committee report for City. And I'd just like to acknowledge that Linda Landau is here, past school board member. Serves on this committee for us and just sat through a nice long, I hope it brought back wonderful memories for you, Linda.
Yeah.
Wonderful, yes.
I want to thank you for your service to the school board and also thank you for your service to this
Thank
committee.
you. And I want to say that I think our agenda time estimates were probably a little better than yours.
Thank you. Teresa.
Due to the generous support of the Orinda community, the parcel tax that we currently have, as in the information I provided tonight, 39% of our local revenue, which is equal to $3.7 million, supports our schools. A parcel tax independent citizens oversight committee was established to address the monies and how it's spent. It was established December 11th, 2011, when the bylaws were adopted by the Board of Trustees. The primary objective and purpose of this parcel tax committee is to ensure that the parcel tax proceeds are spent for their authorized purpose and to report annually to the OUSD Board of Trustees at a public meeting. And I sit on the committee as for information, but Linda Landau would like to discuss and report.
Thank you again, Linda, for being here with us.
Thank you, Teresa, and I'd also like to thank Teresa for her help with the committee. She provided us excellent information. We were perfect. You all have our report, so I'm not going to read it all to you. I just want to point out a couple of highlights. That in the 2013-14 school year, 29.8% of the salaries of classroom teachers and their benefits were paid by the parcel tax. I don't think that a lot of people in Orinda have gotten this message. The last time I came and reported to similar thing to you last year, and we had recommended that you communicate more. Well, I've heard you talking about communication tonight, I think for about 1 minute. But I think you need to move that up higher. I'd like to make a suggestion that you get some teachers to write about the parcel tax and what it does for them, and have their statements published in the local press. We have a lot of new residents in Orinda. Most of them come here for the schools. A lot of them have babies or toddlers or preschoolers who aren't in the schools yet. They don't understand how it works. We have older people who have moved in, who don't have kids in the school. We have kids, parents or couples who don't have any children at all in Orinda and will not have children, and they don't understand how it works. So our committee really feels strongly that you need to let all the Orinda taxpayers, as well as parents, know what this parcel tax does. Because when the time inevitably comes that you'll have to go out again to increase it, you want a good solid layer of information out there that you can build on. And if you're starting from ground zero, it's going to be a much harder sell. So please, we'll be looking for that information, and I hope that we see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. This item's on for discussion of the board.
Thank you for that report, and one of the most important things I noticed about this report was your recommendations about publicity. We're hearing it again and again, and all the various manners of publicizing it, not just through our newsletter, but through the Orinda News, the Long Orinda Weekly, Contrast Times, the many different venues that we have available to us. I strongly recommend that we vigorously communicate this. We're going to have to come back sometime in the future for some other thing, maybe a bond for air conditioning, whatever, and unless the people know that their money is being spent well and teachers are benefiting and their students are benefiting, they're not going to say yes again. So this is critically important, and thank you so much for that recommendation.
Anything else on the board?
I
Joe? I'll let Joe show. I don't want to interrupt you.
I'll make it quick because it just relates to that. I think this is a great example of the #1 priority we voted on tonight was communications, telling the positive story to the community. Our press relations has tended to be reactive to scandal, and I think this is a great story to tell the community on that, and that would be a good thing.
Joe?
I just wanted to make sure the board was aware, because some of you may not have been there, but following the last Parcel Tax Committee report, we did send public release notices to all the media and newspapers about the Parcel Tax Committee. Some of them chose, of course, to put it in, some didn't. We do regularly at all of our meetings review the fact of the contribution of parcel tax and where it goes. Last spring, I spoke to the Rotary Club on the state of the district, emphasized that at our coordinating council, we have current club meetings, all of our newsletters, everywhere that we talk about the budget, we emphasize that fact. So we have made a tremendous effort in that area. That's not to say we will continue to do that, can't do more, but we do that quite regularly.
Thank you.
Maybe we can add something, get something in the Orinda Outlook also on
That city
yeah,
newsletter?
city,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anything else?
Well, I just wanted to say, regarding the coordinating council, since we're gonna talk about the equity issues, I mean, maybe this can be brought up during that same meeting with the fundraising equity issues. I mean, they're knowledgeable, but just, they are also the ones that communicate out to all our school sites about funding, so. And I wanted to also personally thank Linda Landau, who I know well from the past, and thank you for chairing the committee, and I know how important it is having worked on past parcel tax. Thank you.
Public comment on this item? Okay. That was discussion item only. And now we get to the rest of our public comment. And I really appreciate the patience that people have been able to spare. Ilana Belozo? Did I say that right? Okay.
Hey, Julia, Julia, to ask first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Julia,
Very good.
thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Well, thank you. And again, I am not completely familiar with your process, so hopefully this is the right forum for this. I found out a little bit late in the game that I needed to email all of you, and I did, and some of you responded already, so thank you for that. Basically, our concern, myself, my daughter is affected, and several other students, is that we were under the impression that our Spanish elective for our children at OIS, and our children had the elementary school after-school program, so they had sort of tested into a higher level when it started in 7th grade, because there wasn't one in 6th. So they were taking sort of the advanced Spanish ahead of time, and now they're in 8th grade, and there is nothing for them, but we were under the impression, because prior years, the students that were in that same position went to Miramonte to take that next level Spanish class. And this is an elective, I recognize, but it's the same situation with math. So I think it's kind of goes to a process question, a curriculum flow question that needs to be addressed for both our immediate need of the Spanish program and probably this math question as well. So our immediate need is our children were all of a sudden left without a class, and through phone calls and emails and trying to discover why this was, it seems like there's a thorough lack of communication and lack of process between the elementary, the middle, and the high school programs with regard to this, and nobody seemed to know who talked to who when and how that worked. And our poor children are stuck in the middle here, where my child was even talking, sending emails to her last year's teacher trying to figure out what she can do to continue her Spanish training. So I would look to the board to encourage or demand that before a program is canceled, that has been in place for a long time, recognizing that it's not a formal program, that before something like that gets canceled, that something else be put in place. Now, the interesting thing about this is it's not just Wednesday, Tuesdays anymore. The Spanish program was put in place at Del Rey at our school when my child was in kindergarten, and that's when she started. So she is actually, the 8th grade year this year is the first year of kind of a larger group of children. So instead of 1s and 2s, which has been the past, it is now 7 this year and supposedly 15 coming up. So I really think that something needs to be done immediately to reach both the children this year and the ones coming up in the next year or two.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
Ilana?
Yeah, I'm also an OIS. I'm also a parent of an OIS student that didn't get into Spanish at Miramone High School. And then talking again back and forth with OIS and Miramone, I was informed by Julie Parks, the principal, that she informed Mr. Randall and Stacy at OIS during the springs that they would not accept any students from Miramone. Unfortunately, none of us parents were communicated of that decision. So OIS informed us that in the fall we would hear, in the contract, that we would hear from Miramone High School who got in and who didn't. Unfortunately, none of us did. There are about 7 students
in 8th grade that were taking advanced Spanish. And then I just don't understand why this was not communicated to us, because by then we could probably have taken other approaches, such as like how OAS suggested, taking our child to Diablo Valley College for a summer lesson, or hiring a tutor, or maybe even have our kids sign up to a different yearly elective, which for my daughter, it completely messed up her schedule. When the fall, the new school year started, she didn't have her first period for the next quarter. She was placed in an elective that she already had taken. And when she wanted the electives that she wanted to take, her counselor said, I'm sorry, it's full, we cannot offer you that. So it's the lack of communication between OAS, and it's unfortunate that these kids took Spanish for 5 years, or maybe even more. Like my daughter, we taught her Spanish at home as well, but we cannot continue the program. There's no sequence between an elementary and then middle school and then high school. So I would kindly ask the board to revise the language program curriculum, because it's ineffective and unacceptable that these students invested their time and money all these years in another language in elementary school, and they cannot continue this sequence in middle and high school. So that's my...
Thank you. Leanne?
It's the same question I'm going to discuss. So I think one thing is important is the urgency. Like, we really like the board to take actions right away, because we all know all of us only have 1 year of 8th grade. So this is not just my daughter. This is 7 of the students here. And a couple of the parents cannot make it tonight, but doesn't mean they don't have the same concern. So the students been working hard for the last so many years, and we cannot say no to them. It's not acceptable, especially when the principal from both of schools, they all know they don't have a room for our students, and none of them informed any of our parents. And also, right after the school start, all of us try to reach the OIS, try to reach Miramonte, and try to reach even our district. But there's we did not get response right away. Nowadays, the technology, email, I'm not asking to respond by 24 hours. I do my, in my office. But for days and weeks, there's no response to our request, and our student has no class to take. That should not happen to any of the students, and that should not happen to Orinda. We all come here. I'm sure all of you have children and grandchildren here. And we all come here just for the schools. That's it. That's the reason we buy a house here. That's the reason we're here. And I'm sure that's the reason you guys serve the bar here, because you volunteer your time to make it better. But right now, the situation is not acceptable. And they need the action right away. That's what I'm saying. It's urgent. So I think from the budget I learned tonight, you have the money. And I'm sure it won't be too hard to hire a teacher. So if we have the money, we have the teacher, and the student should deserve what they deserve. They should have a class and open right away. And I learned this process, whatever matters need to be put on the agenda. But right now, I don't want this item to be put on the agenda. I wish, I hope, I request, I demand you guys to solve this problem. And before next meeting, before next board meeting, it cannot be put on the agenda. it is a matter of urgency. It's something is really urgent. And this is the best, well, the best solution is we solve this problem right away, and the student can be grouped and to take a class at OIS. And maybe we can, maybe the school board can work with the principal and superintendent, and maybe the EFO can make contributions and some relocation of the fundings. And whatever it takes, somebody should work on it right away. If it's not the case, that it cannot be solved this year, I would, as a parent, I would like to know who is responsible for this thing happen, and somebody need to be responsible for this. We deserve an answer from all the parties to let us know what happened, and we're hoping nothing would happen in future, because I have kids at Miramonte, at OIS and elementary school, so I don't want this type of things happen to any of my kids, and I'm sure none of the parents want that happen to their kids. So I really hope the board can solve this problem tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, I know we can't respond to that.
Aye.
Can we ask Joe to look into it or something so that it doesn't look like we're just not doing anything? Hearing that, can Joe say something?
Sure. You can't see, we can't say anything, but I will ask, I'll work with the superintendent to make sure we respond.
Okay, and that, that maybe, with Mr. Randall, I don't know what the situation was, but, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that's the last of our discussion items. We have one information item that's provided to the board and the public for information, which is the OTAC report. Now is the time of the agenda where we have board reports. This is an opportunity for board members to give a brief report on their activities in the prior weeks. Do you have anything you want to share?
Back to school night, we went to Wagner, except for the portable, the classrooms were hot. But it was good to see all the kids. And the portable's great, again, it's really wonderful.
Any other board reports?
Yeah, I also went to back to school night and just briefly at Wagner Ranch, but I was very impressed with everything I saw. And I also want to state that I was able to attend the district's staff welcome back lunch, which happened on Monday the 24th, and I was really glad to attend that because it's always great to see all the staff and you get a better appreciation for everyone and all the work they do.
I'd just like to report on a great beginning of the year, and I want to recognize one thing, because parents did stay so long, and others tonight, that kind of feedback is very important, and that a lot of us, not on our list here, are the times we spend talking with parents and other community members about everything from sugar to heat. And it's really important that dialogue happen, and I just want to recognize and thank the community for doing that, and everyone here for participating in those conversations.
I really agree. That feedback is so valuable.
And
Joe, time for a superintendent report.
Okay, thank you. Well, first off, I'd want to also ditto on the back-to-school nights. I attended all of them, and it was hot out there. I want to compliment our teaching staff and our administrative staff for their dedication in providing all those presentations to parents, and for parents coming out and being part of that. It was really impressive to see that. They were just wonderful presentations in the classrooms. I want to also thank EFO for their work, as well as the Orinda Rotary for sponsoring the Dancing with the Cars event. Part of that is dollars raised on behalf of the district. My wife and I were able to attend that. It was a great event, and compliment all of everyone involved in that for really showcasing a lot of great community support for our school district. The third item is just to compliment again the entire district and primarily our teaching staff, administrative staff, for the tremendous success with our academic performance on our test scores. This week, the state released that report. We put out some information about it, and we really did surpass our expectations for our students' achievement on those tests. I think we compare really well with our neighboring districts and our whole statewide performance ratings that we're looking at, comparables. We did really well, particularly in the area of language arts, but also in math and science. So my hat's off to everyone for their tremendous success in that area. They can maintain, not only maintain our academic achievement standards, but I think we kicked them up a notch on this test. So, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Future agenda items.
I'd like to make sure we get tech staffing on our agenda, and, I can't remember if this is on our already list, but facilities, priorities update, so there's not a review of, taking a look at where we are on our priorities list.
Facilities priorities list.
Yeah, that document we've been working with for a couple of years. And I'd like to include field renovation on there, which might already be on there as a discussion, which I think was something we raised a while ago.
Yeah. Sarah, what did you have for, can you refresh my memory?
Yeah, well, I requested that we address the wellness policy, since it's, people think we talked about it and we haven't.
Okay.
So that, and then, the board policy on wellness and the whole thing. In addition to that, I said air conditioning, and I kind of mean an overview to start with. I just want to say, obviously we have really old schools. We've had an estimate before that was really expensive. So I think we need to, talk about what makes sense. And then, I don't want Stewart House to go get an estimate from a contractor and whatever. We need to talk about the big picture, how can we address this? And that may, it could be part of the same conversation with the facilities priorities. And those are, I think, are the only two things that.
Yeah, I don't want to overstep any Brown Act issues here, but, I think looking at new options around that is a good way to look at it, because I feel like we got all the information on air conditioning in the schools, and we made a decision as a board that we weren't going to spend the money on it. So taking a fresh look at potential new options or low-cost alternatives, or however, is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if we look at our facilities priorities list, that, that could be part of that conversation.
I think it wasn't that we totally rejected the air conditioning out of hand. We were saying, my recollection anyway, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we were saying we have to have this conversation in a context that's much larger than just the air conditioning. And how can we do this? There's obviously a need out there. Kids are going home, teachers are training, and we can't have that. So what can we do?
Good. We'll do that. Jason?
I like the frame of alternatives. I think the other topic worth having there is maybe a briefing for the board of the safety plans of our schools, should we have an incident on the campus, just so that we understand what the current plans are for that.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We're early tonight.
Staying?